Hello, guys and gals. Me, Mutahar. Do you like using Steam? I know I do. Do you know that there's a lot of malware sitting on Steam? Oh boy. If you've just been downloading any random rinky-dink game and just running whatever files, ladies and gentlemen, you may be hacked. And let's go look into this. This is a game called Mecha Chameleon. Now, on my channel, I do play games. I played this game, actually. And I'll be real with you, it's pretty fun. It's prop hunt. You know, you basically, like, you're a stick figure, you blend into environments, you paint yourself into environments. And my first time playing the game, I'll tell you right now, I absolutely dominated. I don't know why the guy that was playing against us just could not detect one of the best hiding spots that I'd found out in the open, right? I actually racked up a whole crap ton of points. Now, Mecha Chameleon is basically prop hunt running in Unreal Engine 5. And you know the best part about something like this? It's built on user-generated content. So one thing important about Steam, for anybody that don't know, is that basically a lot of these games support things like the workshop. So for instance, if you go to Mecha Chameleon's page and hit the workshop tab, you'll find that if you just look at the amount of people like downloading shit, like if you go to the most subscribed, you're looking at millions upon millions of people playing maps like Art Gallery, Minecraft, Simpsons Family House, the swimming pool. So again, you might be like, whoa, wait a minute, Muda, hold on a second. Is that some AI slop that I spotted there? Homie, you're on Steam. This is just par for the course. Now, this game is actually a pretty viral sensation. I didn't really know much about it because it's not really my cup of tea, but ultimately it's one of these casual friend slop party games, and you can see that right now 45,000 people are playing this game, which interestingly, it puts it up there in like the top 35 games, right? You're up there with Cyberpunk, you're up there with VR Chat, you're above Delta Force, Arc Raiders, Call of Duty. I mean, there are AAA games that wish right now that they could actually have these player counts. So Mecha Chameleon, super duper popular, 75,000 reviews, sold millions of copies. And it's been sitting with apparently a pretty nasty exploit the whole time. So I figured it's time to put on the virus investigations goggles and kind of see exactly how this kind of hack was happening, right? Like, how were people getting infected through an indie friend slop game on the internet? So to give you an idea, when you download anything off of Steam storefront, like for instance, if I want to get Simpsons Family House, I just have to go to the actual thing, the actual like page, hit the subscribe button, and you can see that there's a download that has started. Now, how do you detect this download on your system? Well, basically, you can just go to your game, you can go to properties, and as long as you understand the application ID, which in this case is 470-4690, you can actually hit the browse key over here, go to your Steam directory, and inside Workshop, inside Content, inside the actual ID number, which is 470-4690, you can see that this is literally the Simpsons House downloaded. So these are all the files that are associated. Now, there were actually a few maps that people had found, researchers, where apparently they were just loaded with some extra malware in that directory. So I want to start it out with giving a shout out to two people, two actual researchers in this, that really broke the story, Cale Kugler and Feint. Now, I'm going to start with Cale Kugler, who actually talked about this back in June 21st, 2026, a two-click remote code execution. Now, remote code execution, for anybody that doesn't know, is when, you know, there is something that can be exploited that allows people to run code on your system. And that code could be anything. It could be, you know, them launching a calculator application on your computer. It could be them launching the stage one of a payload that leads to something larger that steals your credentials, that could steal your YouTube channel, your login tokens, your cryptocurrency, so on and so forth. So Mecha Chameleon, as he describes, is a game that also has a shit ton of these, you know, downloadable like maps. So when you play the game, one of the things that sort of gets treated to you online server-wise is that when you connect to something, they will oftentimes ask you to download a mod. And so you have to go to the workshop, you have to subscribe, and then you have to launch the mod. Now, downloading the actual files doesn't really do anything until you actually go into the game and launch it, because this is an Unreal Engine game. When you launch into these like custom maps, you are launching a litany of code that exists in those specific workshop maps. So anyways, Kugler decided to dig in deep and found out that basically they were leveraging the blueprints on Unreal Engine. Now, blueprints on Unreal Engine are kind of like a way to node-based code without actually writing code yourself. So effectively, the way that it worked was a lot of these mods had something known as launch URL. Now by itself, that's not naughty. Imagine how many custom maps you connect to in things like Fortnite, where, you know, a YouTuber makes a map and they're like, hey, go to my YouTube channel and please sub. And it uses one of these launch URLs to launch a web browser that takes you to their YouTube channel to be, you know, for you to subscribe to. So it's not weird in of itself. But when Kugler started to use something known as Ghidra and actually jumped in and looked at the shipping binary for the game, the actual exe file, he found that there were some rather interesting lines. One of them was shell execute W, HWND, yada 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 yada. So in this case, he doesn't actually have any argument control. It just basically is always null. So effectively, according to Kugler, that means something like cmd.exe is off the table, and passing cmd who am I would actually attempt to open the entire string as a path. Running arbitrary commands requires somehow providing a malicious file to the launch URL command. And so ultimately, what they had wanted to do was to pass a batch file or something that could trigger a line of code, trigger that remote code exploitation. So ultimately, one of the things that Kugler had pointed out was when you're downloading some of these maps, when it comes to the Steam Workshop, the way that you distribute content is basically just folders. Anything in that folder is distributed to people. Now, according to Kugler, things like the pack files, which are the map geometry, the textures and audios, and sometimes that preview file can be transmitted. If you go back to the Simpsons map, you can see that they've got the level, they've got the actual like textures and audio and whatnot, they've got the asset registry bin, they've got the preview PNG. Now imagine inside here, there is a new virus, okay? Virus.exe is suddenly like flooded into the system, or anything that normally shouldn't make sense. There should never be like an exe file that's distributed alongside this. But according to Kugler's research, what he had shown that, again, unless I believe the developer actually like counters this out, unless a developer enforces restrictions, basically anything can just throw up in there, right? And in that case, you can probably sneak in a batch file or whatever. So just to test this, he decided to make a batch file, which was payload.bat, which obviously was who am I, pause, and of course uploaded that, blueprinted it through the actual like, you know, system where he said launch the path to that batch file, and it would actually launch that batch file. That is what, you know, he tested, and unfortunately, it seems like it actually fucking worked. So ultimately, ladies and gentlemen, what have we learned, okay? Do not be downloading random files on the internet, okay? Even if it's something in the Steam Workshop, unless it's 5 stars, unless like millions of people are using it, and even then, still exercise caution. Do not download something that like nobody has tested, nobody has downloaded, nobody has even rated, right? It's that simple. So again, this was like a month back, right? It was like a month back. And then of course, later on down the road, an individual known as Faint 3 days ago, where this weekend kicked in, and there was a whole load of new hacks. So Faint had realized that there were some maps out there that were filled to the brim with some naughty malware. Some of those maps included things like laser tag neon, which thankfully doesn't exist anymore. And like I was telling you earlier, look at this map really carefully, right? You can see that literally there's not many people that are downloading or engaging with it. It's got no ratings whatsoever. If you download something like this off the Steam Workshop thinking it's safe because, oh man, it's Valve hosting it, boy, do I have some crazy stories later on in this video to tell you, where literally the FBI got involved with shutting down a kid who was basically stealing over $200,000 worth of crypto on bullshit Steam games being distributed, right? Remember, Valve doesn't even care about Counter-Strike 2 and the rampant amount of hackers there. Why the hell do you think they would care about you? Do you know that there's a game called Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 released all the way back in 2009, sitting on Steam right now with an active RCE exploit? Valve has not taken it down, Activision has not taken it down. You should not be downloading a game like that and playing it connected to other people online unless you absolutely are okay with RCEs ratcheting into your system, you know what I mean? Like, you can see that they're doing stuff like, hey man, we're looking for missing children, which is probably the first time I've ever seen any Steam game do that. Hey, there's a 50% sale off. Oh, by the way, guys, there seems to be a security patch for mod maps. And then, of course, they started to post things like the game itself was not hacked. Currently, the official server has been hacked, which we'll get to a little bit later. So if we look a little bit deeper into Feint's actual research into this, he does a pretty good job where he brings up all of the stuff that is part of these actual like workshop files. So remember, the game itself wasn't hacked. It wasn't like if you ran Mecha Chameleon, you would just instantly be exposed to a hack. No, it was the conjunction of using workshop maps, which, you know, you might be like, well, maybe that's a small percentage. Not really, considering most of this game's actual like sauce comes from people playing on the workshop maps out there, right? You really have to trust what you're installing onto your computer, right? I think there's a certain amount of like responsibility Valve as a company has, because ultimately at the end of the day, I think the people making this game most people don't really think of the cybersecurity when they're distributing shit on Steam. But if you're a platform holder, I think a lot of that responsibility kind of weighs on you. So anyways, what he started to look into were things like assetregistry.bin, and these are files that you can actually read the metadata of in a text editor. And from here, you can identify that there were actual issues in things with the blueprints. So again, the Unreal Engine node-based coding shit was where everything kind of led to. So when we look at Feint's actual like research over here, which amazing job by the way, he brought up and he reverse engineered the blueprint in question, which basically receive begin play, get platform's user directory, replace concat string from string to file. So remember, this was apparently a blueprint that was named something like a lighting system. But you can see right over here, it's not doing anything lighting related, right? It's not doing anything of that nature. When you trace the bytecode, you can see that it goes to the directory and then of course it starts mentioning that bat file. So when the actual like map loads, it triggers the batch file, which then starts triggering the chain that's going to infect your computer. So that's kind of how things ended up going around over here. And ultimately, at the end of the day, when the script was when the script was dropped into your system, that's also readable. And according to Feint, the script ended up coming out and it showed that again, it led to this specific IP address, 3157.34.228. Now, if we take that IP address and we do a quick who is of where that is, now the second stage thankfully didn't operate because according to this situation, according to the research here at the time, and again, this all happened over the weekend. I tried looking into this, but ultimately at the end of the day, things moved really, really fast. But I can't actually corroborate exactly what like Feint is kind of saying over here. So again, 404 right over here, basically the files were never retrieved. So because we didn't get to see these files from the second stage, we really don't know what kind of happens after that, okay? We just know that somebody on Steam was distributing malware that was part of one of the most popular sort of games on Steam. So yeah, what is kind of insane about this is that, again, this is something that we kind of saw like a month ago. One researcher did bring this up. And it wasn't until, again, people were really, really exposed that these developers kind of started to jump in and patch the situation. Now, there was a lot of misinformation over the weekend, which is one of the reasons why I couldn't immediately make the video, even if I wanted to, mostly because when you're researching these things, a lot of info comes out. So for instance, these guys' Discord server ended up getting hacked. And so the hacker jumps onto their Discord server and says that the latest update of the game contains a remote access Trojan, and you have to follow specific steps. That's 100% false, okay? If you're following directions from a hacker that you don't know is a hacker, there's a chance that you could be exposing yourself to an even bigger hack. And ultimately, at the end of the day, the Discord was hacked, according to the developer, because they had had somebody looking into this malware, and unfortunately, that system engineer got hacked while they were researching this hack. And after that, the actual hacker bypassed their two-factor authentication on Discord, altered the server permissions, and banned all the staff members. The infected computer was a backup device, making it impossible to edit game data. The PC has been completely wiped and reset. So ultimately, look, at the end of the day, what's kind of happened over here is people have learned that when you download things on the Steam Workshop, well, they could be filled with malware, okay? It literally can just be that simple sometimes, right? And ultimately, at the end of the day, look, a video game mod, you would think, shouldn't be able to do this, right? But remember the thing, right? Like, if you're running untrusted software on your computer, there's a good chance, okay, that software could be used maliciously, even if it's trusted software. With the amount of supply chain hacks that we've seen over the last few years, I mean, do you genuinely really trust most of the stuff running on your computer? I'm not trying to make you paranoid. I'm just trying to make you kind of think, right? So when you are running a lot of these multiplayer games, remember, a lot of these indie friend slop games are made by people that just love to make games, okay? They're not really thinking about the cybersecurity of it down the road. And so what happens is because something becomes so popular, right? You have really bad people who want to take advantage of it to hack a lot of individuals. Now, how many people got hacked here? I don't know. It could be thousands. It could be the one system engineer. It could be anything in between there right now. But what we do know is that this is a hack that exists here, and it could potentially exist in other Unreal Engine friend slop games that are being distributed right now, okay? So that's something to kind of watch out for. You know, one of the things that like I saw sort of brought up over here was like another story when it came to, again, the FBI arresting this 21-year-old kid known as Zaire Dontavius Zamarian Wilkins. So you can actually see in the criminal conspiracy, like the actual like, you know, paperwork brought by the government, that ultimately this individual was distributing a vast majority, like a lot of these shitty friend slop games. So games like Pirate Fi, games like Block Blasters, which I actually think, if I'm not mistaken, belong to like a hack related to like this person with cancer who had their crypto money stolen by a piece of shit, allegedly by this person. They uploaded games like Lunara, and ultimately, at the end of the day, these games, which, you know, if you look at something like Pirate Fi, for instance, you'd probably think, yeah, that looks shady as hell. But again, remember, these people use Steam as a way to legitimize themselves, right? Like, you go on Valve, you upload a game, some people might genuinely be like, hey, there can't be a virus that exists here, but in reality, there is. And this person's virus was something that had ended up with them stealing around $220,000 with approximately 80 cryptocurrency wallets stolen. So, you know, if you think about it, right? Like, if you know basic shit about what you're doing, you can probably infect a lot of gullible individuals and have their money stolen. We literally have just seen it with this case right over here. Now, a lot of people would be wondering, but Muda, is Wilkins going to get arrested? I mean, obviously he is. Is Wilkins going to get a job at the government? No. Wilkins has not shown a substantial level of, like, intelligence, when at the end of the day, right, the cops literally identified him like this. Subject 1 used a Google email address to register the account. According to the victim company, the developer account associated with Google Account 1 released a game application embedded with malware in or around November 2024. This man had shit OPSEC to begin with, ended up getting caught by federal operators, and now he's probably going to be doing time, and when he gets out, they will be looking at his criminal record and probably saying, yeah, probably don't want to have you around us, okay? It's that. And honestly, what he did wasn't really that impressive to begin with, right? He basically hosted a bunch of dog shit malware on the internet and called it a day. So you can see right over here, the seized evidence included messages between subject 1 and another individual with the username cybel.eth on Signal. And over here, you can see that they talk about, I will buy this rat if you're ready to implement it. It'll be 10K investment on my part. I think it's worth it. If it's really good, we do need a proper rat for this and not some shit. Is already paid for, and I go crypt it. You just need to implement the stealers and rat. And I'm sure with the amount of fucking open LLMs available, hell, just general LLMs and the ability to confuse them, getting the stuff implemented really isn't that hard of a task. But look, I think the big story over here is, look, Valve has had issues like this over the last several years, okay? You know, we've talked about things like Dark Souls, for instance, being completely shut down on PC for a while, a lot of these FromSoft games because of RCEs. We've looked at literal games active right now, like Call of Duty, that still sit on the Steam store with an active RCE, last I checked. And you've got games where, again, friend slop creators make stuff like Mecha Chameleon, and down the road, you know, some enterprising hacker figures out, because that's the name of the game, right? They figure out how to exploit based on the environment that they were working in, right? They realized they were on Unreal Engine. They used the Unreal Engine like blueprint system to inject code against user wishes and were basically launching God knows what on people's computers. Could this have affected Linux people? Absolutely. It could have affected the wine prefix that I was using. Now, how far could it have gotten? Probably not that far. But look, man, when you're on the internet, okay, and you're just willy-nilly downloading shit, you gotta be fucking careful, man. But yeah, that was Mecha Chameleon, ladies and gentlemen. Arguably one of the bigger hacks I've seen on Steam, because really this is a game played by millions. Like, millions of people have bought this game. It's one of the most popular friends log. It's actually a good game. Unfortunately, if you are somebody that just connects to random servers and downloads God knows whatever thinking it's safe, well, you could expose yourself. And that's the reality, right? I think a lot of people that game on PC need to understand that just because it's Steam also doesn't mean that it's completely safe. Anyways, I am out.